Cash is like oxygen for a startup. You can go maybe a few minutes without oxygen, but eventually if you go for too long, you are going to die. Just like if your startup goes too long without cash, it's going to die as well. You might be able to skimp along for a few months by maybe promising more equity to your employees or borrowing money here and there, but eventually it's going to catch up to you and it can cause disaster for your startup. You have to think about the nature of most startups. Most of us rely on outside funding through venture capital, through angel investors, things like that. And most of us are not profitable for a long period of time. And it's our goal to grow revenue, grow the enterprise value of our company, and hope not to run out of cash. And it's our job as founders and managers of the business to make sure that our companies don't run out of cash. So because cash flow is so important, I want to shoot a video on my top 5 tips for managing cash flow for your startup. So these are 5 very actionable things that you can implement into your company. And if you're not already paying attention to cash flow, I implore you to start paying attention to cash flow and start really being intentional about how you manage cash flow, about how you forecast cash flows, because again, it is the lifeblood of your entire company. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it and get to my top 5 tips for managing cash flow for your startup. So tip number 1 is understanding the components of your cash flow. And you can generally break this down into cash inflows and cash outflows. So what do I mean by that? Cash inflows are going to be things like sales. So whenever you sell your good or service or your software or anything that you're selling, generally people are going to pay you for that. So you're going to get cash injected into your business just through the daily operations of your business. Outside of cash inflows that just come from daily operations, you're likely going to get cash inflows from other means. So this can be capital injections like raising money from VCs, investors, things like that. It could be getting funds in from debt. It could be borrowing money from friends, family, anything like that. So anything that is essentially going to add to your bank account is going to be an inflow of cash. And you could probably guess the next piece. Anything that is going to detract from your bank account is going to be an outflow of cash. So these can be things like paying your employees, understanding at a very granular level when you spend money and how much money you're spending at what time. So rent, marketing expenses, anything that you need to spend money on in order to run the business, those need to be budgeted for. Those are going to be cash outflows. So just step 1, fairly easy step, understand the mechanics of cash flow, cash inflows, cash outflows. Just get a baseline understanding of the universe of how cash moves within your business. Tip number 2 is going to be, once you get a good understanding of the cash inflows, cash outflows of your business, you want to start managing at least a 12-month cash flow forecast. So why 12 months? Well, that gives you enough visibility that if you are going to run into a cash flow event, like a cash shortfall, you have good heads up to get in front of that. So you can prepare by cutting costs, you can prepare by raising additional capital. You can generally get a game plan together with about a year in advance notice so that you can try to protect your business against that. Now, here at Forecaster, we always build 5-year projection models, and we like to do it monthly just to be uber safe and to be able to tell our stories better. But at a very, very, very minimum, we recommend at least doing a 12-month cash flow forecast. And if you don't have a good place to start there, we're going to provide a link below to some resources that we have available for download that will help get you started forecasting your cash flow. And that brings us to tip number 3, which is going to be prioritizing expense management, putting together a general plan for how you're going to be spending money and sticking to that plan. So if you're not the only person in your business that's in charge of the credit card, just showing your team, this is the allotted expenditures that we have on a month-to-month basis for different parts of the business is going to be very powerful. And then checking in with them and making sure that you're not overspending. In some cases, you may even want to make sure you're not underspending, so you're not giving the businesses the resources that it needs in order to grow. But generally, you need to have a framework to manage expenses, because if you don't do that, we all probably know from our personal lives that it can get away from you and you can unknowingly spend more money than you think you're spending. And if you're not paying attention to it before you know it, your runway can come right up on you and you could have your back up against a wall and need to come up with cash very quickly. Fundraising in a compromised position whenever you're up against a runway, you're about to run out of money, is a bad idea. It really takes the leverage that you have out of the fundraising process. So getting out ahead of it, prioritizing expense management is going to be a great way to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. Bringing me to tip number 4, which is scenario planning. So typically as entrepreneurs, we have rose-colored glasses on at all times. We want to make sure that we are generating plenty of revenue. We have very ambitious goals and we really want to build something big, something meaningful. But unfortunately, what that also means is a lot of times we tend to over forecast the cash that's coming in, and in some cases under forecast how much we're going to be spending on any given month. So in order to combat this, what we recommend is building a couple of cash flow scenarios. So you're gonna have one scenario that's gonna be your operating scenario, and this is gonna be what you're gonna be using to try to set revenue goals, and that's really what you hope to achieve. But when it comes to cash flow management, we really recommend having a back pocket scenario, which is a worst case scenario where maybe your vendors don't pay you on time. Maybe you have to write off some revenue that you were hoping to generate. Maybe you overspend. Maybe somebody quits and you have to run a big process and pay a recruiter to find a replacement to them, and so on and so forth. So generally you want to have kind of a back pocket plan just in case things don't go as you expected them to. So that way, if things really aren't going according to plan, you can stick to your worst case plan that shows how to avoid running out of cash if things don't go in your favor, right? So this could be reducing expenditures. This could be maybe lining up lenders or talking to investors, what have you. Anything that ensures that even if things don't go great, you're not going to be running out of money is a good idea when it comes to cash flow management. Which brings me to my fifth and final tip, which is always have a cash reserve in your cash flow forecast. So no matter what happens whenever you're running your business, you always have these things that tend to come out of nowhere and you're not prepared for them, even though you really try hard to plan for contingencies through all of your scenario modding and so on and so forth. Life just happens sometimes and you may find yourself in a cash shortfall. We always recommend forecasting or setting your forecast in such a way that you're always going to have a buffer of cash. And how big that buffer is really depends on the size of your business. But typically what I like to plan for is, for my business, at least a $400,000 to $500,000 buffer. Now we've raised about $10 million. We have 35 employees. So my buffer might be a lot larger than a company that is maybe a team of 10 employees that's maybe raised $1 million. They might only need a $50,000 or $100,000 buffer. So if you're not sure what that looks like for your business, I encourage you to get in touch with an expert. At Forecaster, we love chatting through things like this, so open offer there. But just generally try to get an understanding of a good cash shortfall, a good cash reserve that you can plan for in your business, just so that you have kind of that fund ready just in case you absolutely need it. So there you have it. Those are my 5 tips for planning cash flow for your startup. If there's something that you wish that I would have gone into more detail on, please leave it in the comments. Very curious to get everybody's opinion on how they manage cash flow. So let's get a discussion going down in the comments. And of course, if you would like more content around cash flow management, or maybe a variant of what I talked about today, please also drop that in the comments. We would love to make additional resources around cash flow management. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed the content, please don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on bell notifications to get notified every time that we bring out a new video. And if you love our content, you want more, click on the link at the bottom of the video to join our mailing list, where you're gonna get content around finance, fundraising, and all things startup in your inbox every week. Thanks so much, y'all.